He was a certain ascetic being. At a very early age, he'd begun his spiritual path as a seeker after truth and enlightenment. And after some years of questing and life's adventures, he'd become an acolyte. And as an acolyte, undertaking some spiritual practices, disciplines, he was purified, you might say, and he attained what we would call a state of being an adept. And as an adept, he came into the presence of a spiritual master. And after some while with the spiritual master, he attained a degree of enlightenment. And in this state of enlightenment, he was inspired, being in that place where desires had for the most part fallen away, and stillness reigned in his heart. He went to a mountain cave, and there he sat. The cave was situated beside a small spring, so there was fresh water available for him. But as for food, he had to rely on those who passed by. And there were sometimes a goat herder had his goats grazing in the grasses on the hillside, who would bring him some fresh goat's milk, maybe a little cheese. And then maybe a wood chopper would come by and give him some bread. But he never sought food. He never went out to forage in any way at all. But it had been a particularly cold and snowy winter, so the wood choppers didn't come, and the goat herders didn't bring their goats to the mountainside. So he sat, and after some days, the hunger, the pains in his belly became greater than his ascetic practices. So he could do nothing else but get up and go out to find food. So he made his way down the mountainside, not a very big mountain, and he came to fields, a little stream, drank from the stream, crossed, and there in front of him was an undulating field of corn, succulent corn, just ripened. So he went in and he plucked some of that corn, and he sat and he ate those corn cobs with great relish. Then he lay down and dozed for a little while, his belly somewhat appeased from its hunger. He then returned to his cave. But while he was sitting in his cave and about to resume the practices that had been with him for so many years, he had thoughts. What if that cornfield had belonged to a farmer who had a number of children he had to feed, and he'd taken some of that man's livelihood? What if it belonged to some orphans? And that was the way they survived. These thoughts going around in his mind disallowed him from resuming that wonderful state of peace and bliss that had abided with him. So he decided. The very next day he got up and went down the mountainside again and went into the village, and he went to the house of an old widow. And he was given hospitality. She invited him in and gave him warm milk and some bread and cheese. And he asked her, who was it who owned the field of corn? And indeed, he discovered it belonged to a widow with 3 children. And so he realized that he'd committed really what we would term a sin. He had done wrong. He'd taken out of the mouths of others. In this state of awareness, he pleaded, please, I know that I must atone for this act, but let it be instant. Let it happen now, that I may not have a long time where I can attain to that state of liberation. Such was the power of his practices and his state of being, that he was instantly transformed into a bullock. And as that bullock, he was wandering down beside a stream, when it so happened that a farmer came along. And this farmer had just lost his only oxen. The only oxen that he had to be able to till his fields and provide food for his family. So when he saw this bullock by the stream, he wondered who it belonged to. And he asked everyone, and it seemed that nobody claimed it. So he took the bullock for himself. And he had the bullock go to work. Now we know the work of a bullock is very hard. Up at dawn, tilling and opening up those fields so that grains could be grown. His life was hard. But in the state of awareness, this bullock undertook his tasks gratefully and graciously. He toiled and toiled for the life of a bullock, and he died a natural death. Now when he died, the farmer took his skin and put it to good use. He sold it to the tanners, and he gave the flesh and left it for the vultures and the other wild creatures to feed. But the farmer was now in a situation where he could afford to obtain another bullock, and this he did. But it so happened that when his field of wheat was ripened, and his new bullock had gathered and reaped that wheat, and it was beaten and put into sacks and stored so that he could grind it to make bread for his family, 3 robbers came along. But besides sending the skin of his previous bullock to the tanners and putting out its innards for the wild animals, he had taken its skull and put it on a stake in his field to keep away the wild animals. So these three robbers came and found the bags of wheat that the farmer had so diligently gathered, and they put them on their backs and was in the process of stealing them. When as they passed through the darkened field with the moon shining above them, they heard this eerie laughter. Stopped them in their tracks. Where did this laughter come from? And then thought to themselves, oh, it's just some animal. So with their sacks of wheat on their back, they set out again and again. They heard the eerie laughter. They were quite spooked by this time. But then after a while they reassured themselves. But then as they were passing through the field, the moonlight shining down on the skull, the eerie laughter started again. And when they looked in the moonlight, they could see the teeth of the bully going up and down, up and down. The sound was obviously coming from this skull. They were stopped dead. And the skull spoke to them and said, "You know why I'm laughing? I'll tell you a story. I stole some ears of corn from a widow with 3 children, and I was turned into a bullock and had to labor for the entire life as punishment for my sins." Ha! And you've got 3 sacks of wheat that belong to a farmer who has to feed his family. I'm laughing because I wonder what kind of punishment you're going to get. Well, of course, thieves were absolutely brought up short by this message, so that between themselves they decided they'd take back the sacks of wheat from where it came from. And they decided that they would change their ways from that time on. So of course the farmer got up the next morning and his wheat was still there, and he was able to grind it and make bread, and we know how the rest of the story goes. But you know, none of this bothered our ascetic who became the bullock, because he was now in heaven. What is your understanding of the story? Now, as we can, naturally, without effort, allow those 3 levels of mind to work together. To bring about means of expression to an understanding of whatever it is, whether it be a story or that being standing in front of us. Or what to do in any situation. Expression, action, response, thoughts and deeds. when someone is in front of us. And those three levels of mind are able to sum up in an instant what's happening with that being, which is going to elicit a response from us. A response is needed. We're not stones. We're not unfeeling. Awareness is total through a response, even if it's just a touch, a meeting of the eyes, words. What's behind it? What is it? But in this little situation, we have an opportunity to enact it, because we are in a state of existence, knowledge and bliss, Satchitananda. There is, in the story, something going in. It's the same as a person standing in front of us. The story is no different than someone, isn't it? Same thing. So from it, the response arises. And we need not in any way impede that response, whatever it might be. It might be to give them a good slap across the face. That's what's needed. But what is it? We have a chance here to get out. Whatever it is. What's the first thing that arose at the end of this story?
We wait for you to speak. I thought something like the first thing that came was, in fact, no one, there's nothing, no one judging, but each one is left with his own consciousness.
All right. Yes. Okay.
Because the first that transformed into the Buddha wasn't there anymore.
No. I know.
And even for him, when he's transformed into the Buddha, it is uncalled for what he really feels. The offense is.
Yes, of course.
So we create.
Yes. So the power, this power, was the power of his own mind to create the situation.
And then he goes up in the cave.
Yes. Yes.
No hiding.
Yes. No hiding. And the thing that we have to realize is, whatever it is that response is, you can never be wrong. What you say, what comes out of this, whatever perception it is, can never be wrong. Right?
We were talking about this on Sunday, weren't we?
It is.
being, you know, expressing
Yes.
what comes, even though sometimes we might judge it as inappropriate,
Inappropriate.
or
Yes.
other people might
Of course.
judge it as inappropriate.
Inappropriate. They did.
Just as they.
We've been over the fearlessness bit and we know what it is. Allow it to come out and response whatever it is.
But in us becoming more purifying ourselves, the answer is changing.
Yes.
So it's like now there's more, it's not even awareness, but in the spontaneity where we are in action, there is a bigger field of, but it's not absolute field yet. I don't feel myself in an absolute field of awareness where I can totally be aware of the creation that is taking place here. I don't even know you're not either, it's like just happening.
Yes.
But I still have this wondering, that's why I had this conversation.
Yes, and with
Like, you know, it happened to me 2 weeks ago that someone just went away.
yes.
We were in a conversation and I just said something and asked people, no, I'm strong.
Yes, yes.
And my way, and it just went. And then spontaneously I thought, well, that was spontaneous, so I don't have to come back
No.
there. But then I know that with the time going and me dropping more and more ego, things are changing too. So it's all right to think that whatever I am at the moment, with whatever ego is still on, the answer is what it is. I mean, I don't have to reflect on that at all.
Yeah, at all. And the
No.
first thing you have to stop is calling it ego.
Yes.
It's conditioning. It's nothing more than a conditioned mind. Ego is nothing more than a conditioned mind.
But it's more clear conditioning.
It's a more clear condition.
Ego is everything and nothing.
And nothing.
Conditioning
Yeah,
is
you
just
don't know.
conditioning. Everyone. It's
can-
everything we have been adding.
Yes.
Like
Yes, yes.
life and other lives that make
Yes,
us
yes.
think
The
and
same with the story. This is what happened to him. Of course. You could sit and sit and sit, and you've still got that has to be played out. Had to be played out.
you can't avoid.
Yes, you can't avoid.
No. Even if we withdraw,
Yes,
if the
yes.
part hasn't been dealt with, we'll be like a rubber
A rubber band. Yes, exactly. There's enough stories and wonderful, wonderful films like that. Yes, we've seen.
It's perception too, isn't it? People have different perceptions
Oh,
of it. I mean,
Yes.
you know, his perception of doing something wrong,
Yes.
you know, another person would look at it and like, you know, he was hungry, so nobody,
Yes.
nothing was coming to him, so it was up to him to do that. So the direction he went was the direction he followed
Yes.
from even a spiritual sense, if you like, and he came to a field of corn.
Yes. You say,
That
well,
wasn't
God
that he
provided
was
this
doing
corn for me,
anything
so
wrong,
Thank
you
you.
know.
And
That's
go
a
on his
gift,
way.
you know, so, you know, it's just perception,
So
isn't
it's
it? Another
again
person
on
would
his
pat
own-
himself on the
of
back like
course,
he did,
it
another
goes back
person
to
would
this,
accept a gift, and, you know.
karmic,
Yes.
could have even thought that the 1 or 2 corns that he ate
yes.
is like an indirect offering, and the family
Of
will
course.
be released
Of
from
course.
some
Yes.
that they needed.
Yes, and he could have appeased it by going to the widow and saying, thank you, I took to, and she would have said,
Or
"You're
just say
grateful
thank you there to the
Yes,
universe for
to the
delivering.
universe.
I mean, you know,
Of
like,
course.
there's nothing more
That's
needs
what I
to.
thought. I thought, oh, why is he bothering so much?
Yes.
Why don't he go and say, can I do something,
something
for
for
you
you
in
to-
exchange for the flow to keep going?
Of course. Yes.
Point to
Yes. So we add in some other levels of
Yes.
understanding of
But so if he creates him going back as a bully or
Bullock,
as a
yeah,
person
an oxen or
like
whatever.
that, what's the difference with someone who is totally ignorant and creating things that are going to make people suffer, and it doesn't go in his mind as any thought? What happens with this person?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well,
We can.
I'm questioning, so what is the difference between ignorance and not making story of anything?
And not getting caught in it, or not
Because
having
then
any
at
sense
this,
of
at this
wrongdoing.
place, that's why I'm a bit
Mm.
shaken in that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're ignorant and you just go in the field of corn, you're hungry, you just take everything you want.
Uh-huh. Without it.
But then he's here as a boon to tell the other one, hey, look at what I've done, and now. So it's a bit confusing in me, all that.
Does that law still apply? Yes.
The law still apply of if you do from ignorance something that is going to create sufferance, you still have to pay for it.
Yes, you take it to another level then, don't you? And you understand that there
Yes.
are those laws that are
These laws are in action,
in action.
so we can't be ignorant.
Action and reaction.
So we have to be aware. Yeah, okay. Somehow I put things together speaking.
Yes.
And it's not like a punishment, it's more like a balancing.
Consciousness,
Yeah.
knowing, it's not punishment,
Things
it's
are
just
going-
coming to know.
It's like a flow, it's an exchange. You take on credit, you can't, and one moment in the situation, the universe,
Yes.
there's a hole, so it will be
to be paid or
balanced
at some
with-
point. Just going.
Fascinating, isn't it? Eh?
And maybe he, you know, the response seems extreme to us because, well, it was only 2 ears of corn and so on and so on, but remembering the space that he'd been in, which was purification and extreme sensitivity, that he was aware possibly his response was appropriate to what was actually happening, and that because of his awareness he understood the necessity to completely play that out, like to completely play it out. Because if he didn't, if he just went to the widow and gave a platitude to the widow, oh, I'm so sorry, I've had some corn, here's some money for the corn, or here's some, can I do a day's labour, that it wouldn't have satisfied the dance.
That's right. And in the greater scheme of things, as someone was talking about the other day, the ripples in the stream, those 3 robbers wouldn't have, you know, the whole story wouldn't have unfolded and lessons been made by those robbers if it hadn't have been enacted. So
Could be good, could be bad.
could be good.
I was waiting to see where the widow was going to come back in.
Yes, yes.
You know, and the bullock arrived and the man was tending his corn and everything. I was wondering if the
Widow of the
and
corn.
farmer were going to
Again.
get it somehow.
Well, there you go. Take it up, make a story.
and go on the back of the building.
But with all the details of this story, what I really loved at the end of this story, because all of these little things were playing out, and then all of a sudden, but he didn't have to worry because he was in heaven. It's just like,
Yes, yes. And we could ask what the heaven is. Yes.
Well, it looks like you have to go to hell before you go to heaven.
Well, we can attest to that.
Yes, this one we know.